Hello, hello everyone. How are you? Welcome in, Heidman. Philosophy of the mind. Don't mind if I do. And how mindful of you to get the ads out of the way. It's always how I approach the start of a stream. I always hang on. Let me move a little closer to the fire. It's a little cold these days. Uh, it's always how I approach kind of start the streams. I get 3 minutes of ads out of the way. Then I remember this time to turn off the ads afterwards after I have an hour of stuff. Yep. There we go. Yo, welcome in Lancelot. I've still never gotten an ad on this channel. Some people just seem immune to getting ads. I have it on some channels, then other channels I will also get ads with people. Although I think what might happen is because I start ads so quickly, there's a possibility that everyone who joins after, um, essentially don't have to watch them in any fashion, which is good for them. But yeah, it's been nice. Did I talk about how I stole a bunch of tea bags? Not I didn't steal them. They were out there for free, but I just took a load of them. I was at an event. I think I might have told this already, but I was at an event where the people put out some tea bags. I'm kind of starting to go through them. They put out a load of like green tea and various other things. Welcome in, Kwai. Welcome in. Uh, and I've been going all's fair and love and tea exactly last a lot. But everything is out there for free if you're brave enough. If you're brave enough and if you can get away. I mean, you could try and rob the Eiffel Tower. I mean, they did that in a movie once or twice. Uh, I think that was Despicable Me, but you could try. You could try. You could be like Johnny Cash and do it one piece at a time. Did it one piece at a time, and it didn't cost me a dime. Oh, that's a great song. It's all about him, how he works in a Cadillac factory, and how he's always wanted one for himself. So he devises himself a plan, and that would be the envy of almost any man. And he sneaks it out of the factory one piece at a time. But then at the end, it's so great. He has to put it all together at the end of the song, and it's all different versions. So it's like so it's like they actually built that cartoon, did they? Oh, that's so cool. I'll have to check it out. I imagine they probably kind of just winged a lot of it because a lot of it was like just a couple of references to various things, but that's really cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. I never heard about that. We all aspire to live Despicable Me. Mm, mm. Not the minions. I'm a Gru man myself. I always liked how they designed Gru, like big, heavy. I guess is he kind of triangular? Hang on, let me look him up real quick. Despicable Me, Gru. Yeah, he's kind of triangular, but then he also has that kind of round shape. So it's sort of like I'm guessing they're kind of going for he is a bad guy. He's a little bit threatening, but at the same time, he actually has a soft side. Uh, it is it is kind of almost. I haven't watched the other ones in a while, but obviously the minions took over like kind of that area, so it's a little bit unfortunate. Um, but as you guys might have noticed, it's getting a little cold out these days. I'm starting to have to make the fires a little bit stronger. Thankfully, even I mean, it's more for those who are traveling through the forests. They need the warmth. Thankfully, as a Tuatha day, the cold does not entirely affect me. I might at times get a little bit depressed. Not depressed as in depressed feeling, but like my powers are depressed, and I get a little bit sick. But it's sort of like a temporary thing. It rarely affects me properly. Oh, there's birds even flying in the background. Isn't this so nice? But yes, I picked up a. I decided to move spot recently. I have a few other new areas, and one area I'm eyeing. It's a small little village. It seems to be getting up for some end of the year festival. Something a little, as we all know, is Christmas. So I hope you're all looking forward to the Christmas sing along. I think what I will do is by tomorrow I will decide on what day it will probably be on, and I'll start like advertising it being okay, this day, this time. It's probably going to be a little bit. I'm trying to. I'm trying to work out. Should I do it around this time as well? I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say this time would be fine. Maybe an hour and a half earlier, just so I'm not singing while people are possibly going to bed. Some people get into bed quite early, so I don't want to anger them, especially if I'm singing outside a place that's all done up and all festival. Like they would that wouldn't be good. But if I'm going to be away from the fire, I'll have to find some warm clothes. I think maybe some kind of hat and maybe a nice warm cloak, big heavy cloak maybe a blanket. Yeah, something like that would be nice, no doubt. But right now, next to a nice warm fire, I hope you're all settling down and getting cozy. That's lovely to hear, Kwai, that you're excited. I'm nervous. As as I did mention, I do actually take voice lessons, but like singing lessons, not voice acting lessons, because I think there is like a distinction between voice lessons and then voice like singing lessons. Uh, but oh, I thought my phone was going off. Uh, but that doesn't mean that I'm competent. Doesn't mean that I'm amazing. I was watching another VTuber that I sometimes watch and I look at their art, Shu Sakurai. I'm more familiar with someone that he drew, J VTuber, but Shu posted a video of him singing, and Shu has a very naturally high voice, very high. Well, like I believe he is a guy. And just like his voice is naturally very high. But he posted a video of him singing, and I was very surprised at how well he could sing. Now I don't know if that was just completely off the cuff, or if that was the cover that he's going to be posting that's gone through, the stuff that singers do to make them sound better on covers. I assume I remember I once watched another VTuber like put together a mix and work on the vocals for a cover, and it was literally just so much work, just constant. And then also another time he made a song on stream. It was really impressive. He would literally just go through and go like beat by beat, just pressing on his keyboard and kind of playing it back and being like, okay, yeah, I like this motion. Ah, even though I had no idea like about any of the theory behind it. Audio mixing is so much effort. Yeah, that's kind of the thing that if I ever want to do a cover, I know next to nothing about it. I would have to immediately get help. I'd be crying to like people who know it to help me. Uh but uh but yeah, watching someone actually who knows what they're doing, like even just like the amount of time that takes, because obviously you don't want to, not just mixing it, but like if you're doing any sort of pitch correction, you don't want to be doing too much of it because it will be rough. I've tried doing covers. It's very scuffed. I imagine mine will be very scuffed as well. But like, even still, even if there is some pitch correction going on, like that's kind of like the finished product that Shu put up. It's still really good. Like like you can tell that he can sing very well, and because of his kind of naturally high voice, he almost sounds like a boy soprano. First, my setup isn't really for recording. Ah, I see, I see. I don't know if my microphone is suitable for singing. I think it might be. Excuse me. Oh god, wait. Okay, it's not echoey, is it? Because I was messing around with some reverb stuff, and I just realized my voice. Hang on, I have to double check my voice right now. Where is it? Hello, hello. Okay, all good. I got a little concerned. I'm sure you guys would have said it to me if it was. Maybe it would have been like kind of. Uh, it doesn't sound echoey to me. Okay, okay, good, 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 good. No, because I was like messing with reverb earlier, Uh, just testing it. Maybe it would be like immersive. It would be like, oh, we're actually in a forest, and you can hear my voice echoing throughout the forest. But that sounds like too much work, and I imagine I'd have to mess around to make it not be like silly sounding. Like I'm like less that I'm like like in an open forest, and more that I'm in like an empty room, like a big empty room, and I'm just shouting. I'm looking forward to getting back to exercising soon. My shoulder's still a little. I might have to do some specific uh, rotator cuff exercises and some other shoulder exercises that kind of very lightweight, just to kind of bring it back to normality, and maybe some other stuff, maybe some neck exercises too, just to be safe. But I'm probably going to be back to it maybe Friday and Saturday, and then maybe I'll get one more week, and then it's closed for Christmas. Oh, but it's the joys and sometimes the lows of exercising. You sometimes hurt yourself, and you just have to take time to relax. Assuming you're not dumb and you don't push yourself too much. But it will be nice to at least get under a bar again. But I think I will move over to the book we're reading tonight. Back to our philosophy of mind, a beginner's guide by Edward Fesser. Rest periods are a part of proper exercise. Although I mean, there's definitely some routines that actually like work towards you just take a week off at some point. So it might even have done my body good. Besides the injury. um, but usually you'll have like a rest period of maybe a day in between stuff, or you might have the weekend you might take off, or might do some light cardio or something on that day. But yeah, it's okay. I've found before sometimes when I've taken like a week off that I do come back stronger, and obviously it's because your body gets the chance to fully recover. So it's a interesting thing. You want to keep that progressive overload happening at the same time, though your body wants to recover properly. But to the to the book. Oh, let me just make sure of something. Yeah, all good. To the book. We're back to Edward Fesser's Philosophy of Mind, a Beginner's Guide. Now, last time we looked at the topic of, well, thought. We dived into various things, such as looking at reasons and causes and naturalistic arguments for what thoughts are. We looked at things like the computer representational theory that kind of sees the mind as a brain. We looked at things like that some philosophers believe that there might be some kind of uh, unconscious language, mentalese, so to speak, that our brains thinking that we don't even realize. And then there are some critiques of various schools of thought, from both the naturalistic and the materialistic, or say the naturalistic and the realist idea of the mind and how thought works. Uh, One of the more interesting ones I thought was the meaning behind thought processes. So when we think about things, we give them meaning, and it seems that in a computer, when a computer does things, or if our mind is just like a computer, where if it sees, if it's given certain inputs, such as in a calculator, 2 plus 2, and then it will tell you it's equal to 4. Well, you could just as well give that calculator something like, it's raining plus, in text form, it's raining plus going out equals going to get my umbrella. But you could change going to get your umbrella to 4 itself. The argument essentially being, and obviously this is a very, very quick paraphrase, it was a lot more eloquently put by the author and a lot stronger put, that that ultimately the symbols and meaning, the symbols that are on a calculator and the meaning that they actually have require a mind to give them their meaning. Otherwise, they're just meaningless symbols that don't really convey anything. In the same way that thoughts seem, if to have any meaning at all, require require the mind that thinks them to be a real thing and not just itself a computer. The issue being that if those symbols, the one issue was that it doesn't necessarily follow that certain logical inferences follow from others. There seems to be no causal relation from a materialist perspective that dictates logic. And second, I believe the other one then was that. Oh god, what was the second one? I had it in my mind. I was gonna say this one first, but then I switched over to the other one because I remember that one. But what was it? Hang on, let me scroll back and look at some of the headings because I might remember it now. Excuse me. Oh yes, it was basically the idea that if it is just even if you say you accept that maybe it doesn't matter if our thoughts are meaningless and there is no causal connection between what we think and what we intend or mean. Well, then there comes an issue, or something like that. Anyway, there comes an issue that for you to make such an argument, for you to make a philosophical argument around things like that the brain is similar to a computer, and that thoughts and consciousness are just physical processes. Uh, the issue then becomes why should we even believe you? If your thoughts about this topic and what you say are similarly meaningless, according to your own argument, that seems to undermine the very argument that you're attempting to make. Now that was a very botched way of putting it. I can't remember exactly how it was put, but at the end of it, we also looked at another issue that's kind of been cropping up here and there throughout the book, and that is of intentionality. Uh, and this is sort of the idea of something being about something else, being directed towards or thinking about. Mind thinks mind is wrong. Mind is wrong. Therefore, mind is wrong. That mind is wrong. It's a little brain messy, isn't it? It's a little messy with the head. Uh, essentially any argument that sort of leads us. It is an interesting argument, although I think it's not like a conclusive one. Just because the conclusion of an argument and the consequences of it seem very, very wrong. And I'm just going to say wrong because it does seem wrong that our thoughts don't have meaning, like I do think, or like that our thoughts don't have intentionality. Maybe they are correct. And that's when you'd have to bolster in other arguments. And we've been going through various other arguments throughout this book from both sides. But yeah, I feel like any kind of a couple of the naturalistic ideas of the mind kind of have this issue where if we accept their conclusion, it makes it very difficult to believe their conclusion, to believe that what they're talking about has any meaning or matters in any fashion, that they've actually reasoned through any process. There seems to be sort of awkward things to that the naturalistic philosopher has to wrestle with, and of course there's various other ways of looking at things. It's not like these are the only ones, but I think it's just an interesting point. But getting back to intentionality, and this is the idea of that we can think about things. But this raises a question, and the one we're probably going to be looking at in this chapter. If I think, for example, about the lovely, warm, cozy fire behind me, I think about the logs burning and splitting. What is it from a physical perspective, from the naturalistic or the materialist perspective, for a piece of matter to be about another piece of matter? There doesn't seem to be any intentionality in our material world. That seems like a strange proposition. Why would a wet clump of matter, my brain for instance, be about the fire, or be about the burning logs, the sounds of the cracks? What does that even mean for another piece of matter to be about another piece of matter? And then there's also the issue of that the fact that not only can my brain be about this particular piece of matter, but it can change, at least according from my point of view. I can think about the fire, sure, but I could think about Kwai's lovely drawings, or I could think about the snow falling, or the twinkling of the lights. I could think about a lot of things. I could even think about Heidman's model, for instance. There's a there's a lot of things that my brain can supposedly be about. And of course, I think the naturalistic philosopher would deny the idea of intentionality, that it's sort of an illusion of some kind. But let's, I think, get into it. And yes, Kwai, your drawings are very nice. I was actually considering I might look for like a, because I remember I saw you do a, I'm not gonna say exactly what it was, but it was like a Christmas themed drawing. It was a little art raffle, and then I hope you also got some orders. Uh, but then, not but then what? But then I was thinking, perhaps I should have one. It's a little lewd, not lewd, but like not exactly what I would usually go to. But I would certainly be interested in maybe commissioning you to do like a kind of Christmassy themed Ruadh. That could be fun. Redheads are a rarity, huh? A little bit, certainly. Uh, Although here in Ireland they are a little bit more common. I'm open to that. Yes, yes, excellent. Also, I will mention as well before I begin that I have ordered a 3DO, so hopefully sometime soon it'll get in and I'll be able to do proper ASMR, and maybe even my reading will sound better. But if not, maybe a direct a microphone, maybe even my normal microphone might be better for reading. But we'll see when it arrives. But let's get into the book. I've kind of waffled enough. It sounds good now, though. But yeah, I mean, thank you. I'm glad that it sounds good. The 3DO though will allow me to do things. Will allow me to do like proper ASMR in terms of like left to right binaural sounds, and I could like poke your ears, or I could just do like different sounds. So, intentionality, chapter 7. The term intentionality derives from the Latin intendere, which means to point at, or to aim at. Hence the use of the term to signify the capacity of a mental state to point at, or to be about, or to mean, stand for, or represent something beyond itself. Get out of my... Your belief. Oh, it is important to note that intentions, for example, your intention to read this chapter, are only one manifestation of intentionality. Your belief that you are reading a book, your desire to read it, your perception of the book, and so forth, exhibit intentionality just as much as your intention does. The concept was of great interest to the medieval philosophers, but Franz Brentano, 1389, 1838 to 1917, is the thinker most responsible for putting it at the forefront of contemporary philosophical discussion. Brentano is also famous for regarding intentionality as the mark of the mental, the one essential feature of all mental phenomena, and for holding that their possessing intentionality makes mental phenomena ultimately irreducible to and inexplicable in terms of physical phenomena. The previous two chapters gave us reason to think that he was right to make the first claim. The present chapter will consider whether he was also right to make the second. In chapter 1 and 2 we examined some reasons, for taking intentionality to be mysterious and perhaps incapable of a materialistic explanation. The intuitive idea was as follows. When we consider examples of material entities that exhibit intentionality, words, sentences, pictures, we see that they do not have their intentional content inherently, but only relative to human interests. In itself, a word, sentence, or picture is just a meaningless set of ink markings, and has whatever meaning it has, only because we convey it to a meaning. And this would also hold for the fact that a word or a sentence can just be a series of sound waves that are heard, or just sound waves in general. They don't carry any distinct meaning. As Searle has put it, the intentionality present here is derived intentionality rather than intrinsic intentionality. Searle also distinguishes a third category, as if intentionality, which something exhibits when it behaves as if it had intentionality, though it really does not. For example, the way water in a river moves as if it wanted to get to the ocean, when in reality it doesn't want anything. So this sounds kind of like anthropomorphizing something, non-organic matter. The derivativeness of their intentionality seems to be a necessary feature of the entities in question, since it is intrinsically just a collection of meaningless particles of ink. Say a written word or sentence couldn't have intrinsic intentionality. But what is true of these examples seems true of material entities in general. Sound waves emitted by the larynx, electrical current passing through a computer, and the like all have whatever intentionality they do, only in a derived fashion. More to the point, brain processes, composed as they are of meaningless chemical components, seem as inherently devoid of intentionality as sound waves or ink marks. Any intentionality they have would also have to be derived from something else. But if anything physical would be devoid of intrinsic intentionality, whatever does have intrinsic intentionality would thereby likely have to be non-physical. I added likely there for some reason. It was just have to. It would have to be non-physical. Since the mind is the source of the intentionality of physical entities like sentences and pictures, and doesn't get its intentionality from anything else, there's no one using our minds to convey meaning. It seems to follow that the mind has intrinsic intentionality, and thus is non-physical. In Chapter 5 we considered the suggestion that the objection to identifying qualitative conscious states with brain states could be overcome by arguing, in modified Russellian, neutral monist fashion, that neither perception nor introspection reveals to us the inherent nature of its objects. The way the brain appears to us in perception, and the way conscious states appear to us in introspection, are not necessarily the way those things really are intrinsically. Perception and introspection give us only representations of the brain, and of qualia bearing consciousness experiences, respectively, and not the real nature of those things as they are in themselves. If it seems like that brain states and conscious states cannot be identical, this might reflect just a difference in the way we represent them, and not an objective difference in the things themselves. They might, for all that, really be identical after all. Could such a move be made in answer to the argument just sketched about identifying intentional mental states with brain processes? No, and the reason should be obvious. The modified Russellian neutral monist strategy depends on holding that the greyishness and squishiness of the brain are not intrinsic to the brain, and that the qualia associated with conscious experience are not intrinsic to the experiences. The greyishness and squishiness and qualia all exist only relative to our representations of the brain and of conscious experiences. But the same move cannot be made with respect to the intentionality of intentional mental states. It would make no sense to hold that the intentionality exhibited by the mind does not exist intrinsically in the mind itself, but only relative to our representations of the mind, for a representation is itself a manifestation of intentionality. We couldn't possibly represent ourselves as having intentionality unless we really had it, in which case we never have it only relative to a representation. That we can represent at all shows that we have it intrinsically. And there was an interesting kind of thing going on here. It's kind of this idea of a dependent, I wouldn't say causal series, but it's kind of this idea of a dependent series. you know, say you're talking about going back in time. No, I'll leave discussions of hierarchical and horizontal causal series out, but just to reiterate that the argument is essentially saying that for any physical thing to represent intentionality, it must be getting its intentionality from something else. But it seems that natural and material objects, such as material objects such as, say, rocks, sentences, words, symbols, they don't have any intrinsic intentionality, but rather derive it from something else. And no material object can have intrinsic intentionality. So it must be non-physical, and that non-physical thing that does have intrinsic intentionality must be the brain. But let's get in then to naturalistic theories of meaning. That, anyway, is the prima facie case for holding intentionality to be inexplicable in materialistic terms. But despite this apparent difficulty for materialism, or perhaps precisely because of it, the attempt to provide a materialistic or naturalistic account of intentionality has been made one of the main preoccupations of contemporary philosophers of mind. Some of them have suggested that the variety of accounts developed in recent years give, by virtue of their very existence, reason to think that a materialistic explanation of intentionality should at least in principle be possible after all. So we need to consider these accounts and see whether they overcome the intuitive difficulties that seem to face such an explanation. The major theories can be grouped into 4 categories. So, excuse me, I just had a sip of water. 1. Conceptual role theories. Now, this sort of theory proposes that the meaning or intentional content of any particular mental state, a belief, desire, or whatever, derives from the role it plays within a system of mental states, all of which, as we've seen, seem logically interrelated in the manner briefly discussed in Chapter 3 and 6. Since to have any one mental state seems to require having a number of others along with it. The idea is that what gives the belief that Socrates is mortal the precise meaning it has is that it is entailed by other beliefs, meaning that all men are mortal and that Socrates is a man, that together with a belief meaning that all mortals will eventually die, it entails a belief meaning that Socrates will eventually die, and so on. If we think of beliefs, desires, and the like as a vast system of logically interconnected elements, the theory holds that each element in the system gets its meaning from having precisely the place in the system it has, by bearing exactly the logical and conceptual relations it bears to the other elements. Warty. How? Water. Yeah, I think I kind of pronounce it more like a water, like with a D, like a soft. The T becomes a soft D. Water. I'm gonna have a sip of water. Water. Ooh. And from my time in England, they do sometimes really pronounce it with the hard T. Thank you very much for the stretch redeem. I was out walking today, so I was kind of stretching as I walked. So I should be relatively warmed up and limber. I kind of like going for a nice like 40-minute, 50-minute walk after work, just to kind of get out in the air and freshen up, especially when it's nice and cold. Because I find the cold air really does just feels so nice. So, and it kind of refreshes you. Where were we? Oh yeah. More precisely, it is the objects of beliefs, desires, and the like, sentences of mental ease according to the CRTT, or more generically, and for those not necessarily committed to CRTT, mental representations of some other, non-sententional sort, that bear meaning or intentional content. But for the sake of simplicity, we can ignore this qualification in what follows. There seems to be a serious problem with the conceptual role approach. Namely, that even if it is granted that mental states have the specific meaning or content they do, because of their relations to other mental states, this wouldn't explain how mental states have any meaning at all in the first place. That a particular belief implies other beliefs, or is implied by them, presupposes that it has some meaning or other. Nothing that was completely meaningless could imply or be implied by anything. The very having of logical and conceptual relations assumes the prior existence of meaning, so that no appeal to logical and conceptual connections, can fully account for meaning. Moreover, if belief A gets its content from its relations to beliefs B and C, and these get their contents from their relations to beliefs D, E, and F, we seem destined to be led either in a circle or to an infinite regress. Either way, no ultimate explanation of intentional content will have been given. To provide such an explanation thus inevitably requires an appeal to something outside the network, something which can impart meaning to the whole. So I think this is a good time to actually talk about causal. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, but it seems that this argument can kind of come in multiple varieties, attacking similar connected ideas. But the idea that he's getting at here is that there's two different kinds of causal series. One is sort of like, the best way to explain it is a horizontal, or a, what's it called, par accident, like accidental causal series. And it's where each of the members have their causal power in relation to whatever this series is about, intrinsic to them. So a great example is, be right back, I'm gonna do my makeup, my faces, and looking like minions. I'm always impressed with like women who have to do their makeup. Like you have to spend time on that all the time. It's like I could not be bothered to do that. It just seemed like such a hassle. Like getting into a habit of putting on like moisturizer. Already took a little bit of time for me, or using like hand cream for my, well, it was sort of like mainly for my nails, when I was recovering from biting them. I have to, because there's a party later and I don't want to carry my kit. I see. Yeah, that's even that must be weird, because like, you know, when girls are going out for parties and going out for a night out, then there's even more makeup that can have to go on. Not necessarily more, but like different styles and stuff. It just seems so, like, I remember at an event, one of a girl that I know, she was putting on makeup because there was an event later, so she like had all her stuff with her, and all the girls were talking about stuff, and I was kind of sitting to the side with another fella, and we were just chatting about it. We were kind of watching her do it, and it was just like, oh, that's so much work. So much work. While for us, it's just like, have a quick shower, make sure you're nice and clean, draw on your clothes, maybe brush your hair if it's a little bit wild, put on some cologne and some deodorant, and you're good to go. But what was I? Oh yes. So there's two kinds of causal series, at least under and this is kind of to explain what he's talking about here. One argues that so a great example to think about this is, this would be the horizontal or kind of non-dependent causal series. If we imagine that you know, a father has a child, that child can exist independently of the father. Not necessarily independently in the sense of like, oh, I live independently of my parents, that I make my own money, but rather his existence, for this instance, we'll just take existence as an explanation, is not dependent on the father. The father could cease to exist, as they often do, and the child would continue to exist. But let's go one step further. Let's go a little bit deeper and consider the idea of being able to have children. So a father can beget a child, and that child can in turn beget another child, his child. So they both have a power in this sense. But neither of them depend on prior thing, other than the initial act of procreation, for their ability to have a child. And this can go far back into the past. And potentially, such a series could go on to infinity. There's no necessity in such a series that that there be a stopping point. At least in theory, there's some arguments of whether such an infinite causal series could exist. But there's nothing necessarily immediately wrong about the idea of a derived causal series extending backwards in time to infinity. It could just keep on going. And same with this idea here, where these relations that A gets its content from B and C, which get their content from D, E, and F, and you can keep going back and forever and ever, so that you have sort of an infinite regress. If this relationship was set up in such a way that that was the relationship, then the fact that it would lead to an infinite regress would seem, anyway, possibly to not be an issue. But that doesn't seem to be what this relationship is. If in a what can be called a hierarchical or a vertical or a per se ordered series, these things have derived in this case intentionality. The ceasing to exist, or the ceasing of a relationship between one point and another in the causal series, would cease the later or the posterior parts of the series from having any power at all. So a great way to think about this is like, say I want to power my computer, and I plug my computer into an adapter cord. You know, those things that have 4 plugs and then there's another plug. Will that allow me to power my computer? No. The adapter cord itself doesn't have the power to generate electricity, or at least isn't connected to any frame. So say I plug that adapter into another adapter. Would that work? No. What if I plugged the second adapter into a third one? That still wouldn't work. And we seem to be touching on this idea of a dependent causal series, that each of the members do not have, except for the very first one, do not have the power within themselves, either intrinsic power to do something, in this case generate electricity. No matter how many adapters I plug in, I could go on to infinity, it would never have electricity to power the PC. So, what do I have to do? It has to have something outside of itself. Not an adapter, and not the PC, because the PC obviously needs to be powered because it requires it. And all those other things require the power. So say we plug it into a generator, and it generates the power outside of the causal series, or at the very start of it, and it gives everything that power. In contrast to the children, the father, child, grandfather, grandchildren situation, if I was to plug out one of those adapters, all of the next adapters would also cease to have their power, despite the fact that the first member of the causal series still exists. If there's not a connection, then there's an issue. And that seems to be the type of causal series that Fesser is connecting to the idea of logical inferences, logical meanings, and relations between the conceptual role theory that's being argued here for the materialist. And I hope I explained that well enough. John Searle, who endorses something like the conceptual role theory of meaning, acknowledges that logical and conceptual relations between mental states cannot be the whole story if circularity or infinite regress is to be avoided. And sorry, I should just say, that's why infinite regress in this situation is an issue. If it does go into infinity, or it's like a circle, that eventually you wrap around, and Z's meaning comes from its relation to A, but A's meaning was the thing we were attempting to explain in the first place, or at least A having meaning. If you argue in a circle, it's almost like a series of gears in a circle that are all turning. Your immediate question is, what gear is turning first? There must be something, maybe something outside of the gears that's turning the gear in the first step of the series. It would be very confusing. And if it went on to infinity, you'd still ask, why are all the gears turning? What's the first turner? But this is getting into other arguments, such as theology, away from our philosophy of mind. John Searle therefore postulates that the entire network of intentional mental states, he capitalizes network to signify its status as a technical term, rests on what he calls a background, also capitalized, of non intentional capacities to interact with the world around us. We have, for example, such intentional mental states as a desire to have a beer and the belief that there is beer in the refrigerator, and these mental states do in part to get the specific meaning they have via their relations to each other and to other mental states in the broader network. But ultimately, these mental states and a network as a whole function only against a background of capacities, such as the capacity to move about the world of physical objects, pick them up, manipulate them, and so on. This capacity is not to be identified with the belief that there is a real external world of physical objects, for if it were such an intentional mental state, then it would have to get its meaning from other mental states. Trolls. Welcome in, Haru. Trolls, bottle of water. Drown check. Thank you very much. Ow. My face. Thank you. I actually needed that sip. I'll finish this. Little topic. But how are you, Haru? Haru, you. But I'll finish this topic, and I think I'm going to show off a little drawing that Haru did. A little sketch. Where are we? Oh yes. But ultimately, these mental states and the network as a whole function only against a background of capacities. Oh, I read that. This capacity is not to be identified with a belief that there is no real external world of physical objects. For it is, if it were such an intentional mental state, then it would have to get its meaning from other mental states, and thus couldn't serve as part of the background that ends the regress of mental states. The capacity in question is rather something unconscious, and without intentionality, a way of acting rather than a way of thinking. One acts as if one had no belief in question, though one in fact does not. While this capacity could in principle become a conscious, intentional mental state, one could come to have the explicit belief that there is a real world of external physical objects that I can manipulate and move about within. This would mean that this particular capacity has moved out of the background and into the network, and now rests on some other unconscious, non-intentional background capacity or way of acting. There is, in short, always some set of capacities or other that comprises the background, even if it is not always the same set for different people, or even for the same person at different times. These capacities serve to ground the network of intentional mental states. I just woke up from a nap. Oh, I hope you had a nice nap, Haru. But as some of you may know, Haru often joins and says drown check, and then she decided to draw what she imagines happens when she drown checks me. And where is it? It's here. This is what she imagines happens. She tosses a full bottle of water, full force into my face. It smacks me, and then I have to appreciatively and graciously pick up the bottle of water that I was hit with and sip from it and take a drink. Death by bottle of water. We mentioned that earlier, actually, that the way British pronounce it, or at least some areas of England do pronounce it as water, no T. But I think more common in Ireland. I think there might be some areas that do it, but more common in Ireland, you would hear the water. The T becomes a soft D. Water. But it's such a good image. I really want it as an emote. I think that would be so funny alongside some kind of bonk emote. Hang on, wait a minute. Soon, I'm gonna finish exams. Of course, take your time, Haru. Let me know whenever you want, because I'm gonna commission Haru to do it, and maybe one or two other emotes. I can start fleshing out my emotes finally, and then I can what's it called? I can be a real streamer. Yeah, but yeah, whenever you have your time when you're free. Welcome in, Toete. You're you seem excited for emotes. Oh, shoes emotes are great. The shaky and the you know, the fact that he's an artist means that he can draw all his emotes and he can do animated emotes and so much stuff, and it's like you're excited about the new Twitch rules. I saw they updated and kind of coalesced their various sexual content rules into one area, as well as change some things up regarding, yes, apparently they got rid of the thing that says I had a second account I will use for this. Oh no. I think you can now draw like kind of not safe for work content to it. Not full on, but like I think they don't mind it now as long as you appropriately uh as long as you appropriately label it. Welcome in, D. Oh man, so much color on the stream today. Thank you. I hope all of you enjoy the new background for winter. It's cold out and it's snowy, but uh it's okay. I can still build a fire. It's still very capable of warming you up. Yeah, you look colorful. I also manifested myself a little bit more strongly. So the my eyes and my hair and I'm we're not colorblind anymore. I know. Hang on, I could I can I can do this. Is it this one that does it? Yeah. Now you guys are colorblind again. Oh no. I'm using the full spectrum of my vision. All four colors: blue, red, uh, skin tone, white skin tone, and grey. All four colors of my vision. This sounds like the colors that a dog sees. They see like five colors. Um, it'd be really cool to be a dog and like live through the world through smells. You could just like imagine being able to tell a load of stuff about someone because of how they smell, or like catching a scent. Like I sometimes am walking my dog and he'll catch something and it'll be like a rabbit. I can see the rabbit. I might be able to see the rabbit over like a hedge or something. So I'll see him, but he'll go stiff and he'll just like the paw will come up and he'll look around. He'll sniff around a little bit more and sniffs your whole childhood. I know it is. They do seem to have abilities though that like they can literally tell what your health is like. They can tell so much. Dogs, for instance, and then you have bloodhounds, which are just like a step above, and then there's other animals whose senses of smell are like even better. I can't think of. I'm sure there are other animals, but like when you have bloodhounds after you, it's very difficult to get away from them. They're so good, and they can follow trails for so long and so old. Although there are ways apparently to get away, because people have gotten away from them. But yeah, the new Twitch thing rules, and also they're changing the front of it. Are you a dog person? I'm very much a dog person. I love doggos. I love big fluffy dogs, especially. Golden poodles are really there's a lovely no is he golden poodle? He's like he looks like that. Yeah, yeah. They've updated the sexual content rules. They've changed it and kind of coalesced it into one area. And I think they got rid of that the rule where it's like you know focusing on certain body parts through like posing. So like now all those now that woman who is like bent over uh, as she writes a subscriber's name on her whiteboard. You know that's actually totally fine with Twitch now. It's not like it wasn't already. I'm sure all her favorite mods, not mods, sorry, all her favorite Twitch, yeah, mods. Not like her mods of chat, but like the mods of Twitch. I'm sure that they're very happy that they won't get called out about it anymore. So I can get a giggly emote. I thought you meant like, I thought, I thought you meant like a giggity, like from Family Guy, giggity. Um, Toete, I'm sure you're gonna have great fun with that. I can already imagine some of the more interesting art you might do now. But I think that they specifically updated a section for what would you call it, like art. So I'm sure you can take a look at that. I might have a read of it myself. Later on, I only saw like some snippets of it. I just want to see like what exactly the rules are because apparently these are meant to be a little bit more clear. I mean, it's just for a. I mean, this is just for art. Oh, are you talking about your second account that you use for like other stuff? No, I'm confused. I mean the rules. No, I think they change. I think it's just general sexual content. So they've changed things around completely. So like I can't imagine they'll allow back the ASMR artists that were doing not ASMR artists, just the woman who was just naked. Although it's been very funny watching a load of VTubers is allowed but not saying. Ah, I see. Oh, that's good. That at least they're giving that option. Um, but you know, it's something that I think people on Twitter or on Twitch have been asking for a lot, much more, like to have those things explained in depth. But I think we will get back to the book. I'd like to at least get two of the theories out. Okay, here we are. Uh, right. There is much to be said about Sear's hypothesis of the background, but it seems that it cannot save the conceptual role theory. For to speak of a non-intentional capacity for acting is to speak ambiguously. Consider that when you act without the conscious belief that there is an external world of physical objects, but merely manifest a capacity to interact with the world of physical objects, your capacity isn't non-intentional in the same way that an electric fan's capacity to interact with the world is non-intentional. You behave as if you had a conscious intentional belief in a world of physical objects, but of course you don't, because it typically never even occurs to you either to believe or doubt that there is such a world. You just interact with the world, period. The ASMR category on Twitch was not for me. You click onto a single stream and, well, multiple streams, and they're essentially tonguing their 3DO mics. And I'll be getting a 3DO mic soon, but I promise you, I will not be assaulting my microphone on stream or in general. Ugh, I hate those sounds. And there's only been very few people as well that I've enjoyed any sort of kissing ASMR, and it's usually very it has to be very soft, like very quiet, and not really wet. Binaural Rua. Why can't I say my name? Binaural Rua. I think the oral was messing up my ability to say Rua. Binaural Rua. Yeah, yeah. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be cool to have it. How I'm going to explain it to family and like friends when they see it, I do not know. I'm gonna have to try and hide it. But okay. Oh, yeah. The fan also behaves as if it believed there was a world of external physical objects that it wants to cool down, say. But of course it really doesn't have this belief, or any at all, or any wants at all. In the case of the fan, this is not because it just hasn't occurred to the fan to think about whether there is such a world, for the fan isn't capable of such thoughts. It is because, rather strictly speaking, the fan doesn't really act or behave at all, as opposed to just making movements, and the reason we don't regard it as acting or behaving in the same way we do is precisely because it doesn't have intentionality. It is a dumb, meaningless, unconscious hunk of steel and wires. I actually think it's wrong to call it dumb, because dumb would imply some kind of intelligence, but it's completely unconscious. We on the other hand, don't merely make physical movements. The waving of your hand when your friend enters a room isn't just a meaningless movement, but an action, the action of greeting your friend. If it was just a meaningless movement, the result of a seizure, say, we wouldn't count it as an action at all. It wouldn't in that case be something you do, but rather something that happened to you. The fan, however, is capable of making nothing but meaningless movements. For something genuinely to behave or act as we do requires that it does have intentionality. Action and behavior of the sort we exhibit are themselves manifestations of intentionality, and thus presuppose it. But in that case, an appeal to the capacity for action cannot provide the ultimate explanation of intentionality. We need to know why our capacities for action are different from the mere capacities for movement that a fan exhibits. Merely nothing, a la Searle's background hypothesis, that our capacities are non-intentional ways of acting cannot help. That they are genuinely ways of acting is precisely what needs to be explained. Indeed, since they are ways of acting, they cannot be literally non-intentional. For if they were, they would be no more true ways of acting than are the capacities of an electrical fan. A capacity for action is, as a matter of conceptual necessity, an intentional capacity. In fairness to Searle, it isn't clear that he intends his hypothesis of the background to serve as a complete explanation of intentionality. His aim may be just to draw out some implications of the fact that mental states are logically and conceptually related to another in a network. The point, though, is that his way of avoiding the circularity or regress that threatens any conceptual role theory cannot be applied to in order to vindicate such a theory as a complete theory of meaning, and that it may even be incoherent if Searle holds that the capacities and ways of acting that form the background are literally devoid of intentionality. Causal theories. The right way to break out of the circle or mental state or regress of mental states is, in the view of many contemporary philosophers, to appeal to the causal relations that those states bear to elements of the external world. It is in this view not merely the relations these mental states bear to one another that give them their intentional content or meaning, but also the fact that those mental states tend to be generated by certain kinds of interaction with the thinker's environment. Your belief that the cat is on the mat has the particular content it has, not merely because of the logical and conceptual relations that beliefs bear to the other mental states, but also because that belief tends to be caused by the presence of a cat in your external surroundings. Some theorists would hold that causal relations alone account for the intentional content of mental states, while others allow that conceptual role plays a part as well. The latter would accordingly distinguish between wide content, that aspect of the intentional content or meaning of a mental state that is determined by its causal relations to the external world, and narrow content, that aspect of intentional content or meaning that is determined by a mental state's relations to other mental states. Theories which, like causal accounts, tend to emphasize wide content are typically referred to as externalist theories, since they focus on causal relations to elements external to the thinker, while theories like the conceptual role account, which tends to emphasize the priority of narrow content, are called internalist. since they focus on logical and conceptual relations between mental states, which are internal to the thinker. Externalist theories have in recent years come to be favored by philosophers of mind interested in giving a naturalistic account of intentionality. The reason for this is not difficult to see. As noted earlier, the mind's evident causal interaction with the physical world provides the most powerful argument for the materialist claim that the mind must just be one more part of the world, and that the best way to account for the mind in materialistic terms is to analyze it into its causal relations in the central claim of the functionalism that has come to be the most popular version of materialism. It is natural, then, for the materialist to suspect that a causal approach to intentionality in particular is likely to succeed if any naturalistic approach will. Moreover, the causal approach clearly has some intuitive plausibility. Surely, one is inclined to say, the fact that your belief that the cat is on the mat was caused by the cat's being there has something to do with the fact it has the content it does. As it stands, and as all causal theorists recognize, the idea clearly needs development. For you could have the belief that the cat is on the mat, even if that belief were not caused by the cat's being there, but instead caused by something else, like hallucinogenic drugs put into your coffee, for instance. And the cat's being there could cause a belief other than the belief that the cat is on the mat. For example, because of bad lighting, it could instead cause the belief that the dog is on the newspaper. That's some really, really bad lighting, oh my god. Not only do you think a mat is a newspaper, but you think a cat is a dog. I should have said that the other way around, because the mat on newspaper seems more ridiculous. So mere causal connections is not enough to account for meaning. At the very least, some kind of regular correlation between a mental state and a particular cause of that state also seems crucial. Excuse me a moment. I trust the hallucinogenic in the coffee theory better. I do as well. I think it probably wasn't bad lighting. I think this guy is just high as fuck. At the very least, some kind of regular correlation between mental states and a particular cause of that state also seems crucial. Many philosophers see models for such correlations in the natural world. Smoke is correlated with fire, the rings of a tree with its age, and the symptoms of a disease with the disease itself. So regular are these correlations that in each case we typically take the presence of the effect to provide a reliable indication of the presence of the cause. That is to say, we take the presence of smoke to be a reliable indication that fire is present. The presence of 33 rings. Fine. The presence of 33 rings. Wait, no, hang on, it's even worse. The presence of 33 tree rings. Ugh. Reliably to indicate that the tree is 33 years old, and the presence of red spots to be a reliable indicator of measles. Indeed, we even use the language of meaning here. We say that smoke means fire, and so forth. Such regular, reliably indicative correlations seem a plausible model for the sort of causal relations that could explain the meaning of or intentional content of mental states. A little thought shows that even this development of the most basic idea of the causal theory of meaning cannot be the end of the story. For how could even such regular causal correlations explain our ability to have thoughts about things we don't seem to have any causal connections with? Examples: non-existent objects, Superman and Santa Claus. Oh, Santa Claus, he's going to be here soon. 6 teacups or 60 cups. I would go 6 teacups, because tea is good. Although with 60 teacups, if you had 60 teacups, you could have a lot more tea. But they're not necessarily teacups, they're 60 cups, so they might just be like jugs. further future objects and events, and so on. Moreover, how can it explain our ability to make mistakes? In many cases, a mental state means something with which it isn't causally correlated in a regular way, as we've seen. You might, because of bad lighting, take something to be a dog which is in fact a cat. Philosophers call this the misrepresentation problem for causal theories of meaning. A related, though distinct problem is the disjunction problem. If, because there's always bad lighting in your house, or because you've got bad eyesight, a particular mental state of yours tends regularly to be caused not only by cats, but also in certain circumstances by dogs, why, if the causal theory is true, should we regard that mental state as representing cats uniquely? Why should we not regard it as representing, disjunctively, cats or dogs in certain circumstances? And I'll just point out here, why should we not regard it as representing disjunctively cats or, and then the next four words all have dashes between them, dogs in certain circumstances? So it's qualifying, it's not just or dogs in certain circumstances, it's the one, like, kind of one word in a sense. It's hard to explain that in a true word of mouth. If you had 60 teacups, you could probably make all your pilfered tea at once. I probably could. But then, that would be a lot of tea to drink. That would be a lot of tea. There were some really nice ones in there, actually. There was some nice green teas. I don't really drink much green tea. I might try to get more of them. If only we had more events that I could steal. Or wait, S-T-L. That was fucking dumb. Then there was like one that was kind of like ginger. What was it again? It was like ginger, something infused ginger tea, and it was really nice. There's a few like specially flavored black teas, but like honestly, the regular black tea, like Lions or something, 7 out of 10 for the pun. Maybe it would have been higher if I managed to flow it better. Steel. That's probably better, yeah. But thank you. I'll take that score. It's a decent average or decent score. Of course, there are going to be many cases where it does represent cats uniquely. The elderly person with bad eyesight might really only think that a cat is present, even when it's a dog. But that is precisely the problem. How can the causal theory explain this, given that the theory seems to entail that your mental state will represent anything that regularly causes it? Jerry Fodor, an influential proponent of the causal theory, has suggested that the solution to such problems lies in the notion of what he calls asymmetric dependence. The idea is that, when a mental state typically caused by cats is also caused by dogs in certain circumstances, the latter sort of causal connection is parasitic on the first. That is to say, dogs in certain circumstances will cause the relevant mental states only because the mental state is already typically caused by cats. The dog in certain circumstances causal connection only gets set up once the cats connection is in place, while cats would cause the relevant mental states whether or not dogs in certain circumstances ever did. The causal connection between the mental states and dogs in certain circumstances is therefore asymmetrically dependent on the causal connection between the same mental state, and cats, the former connection will exist only if the latter does, but the latter would exist whether or not the former did. Comedy is 90% timing. I just wasn't. It would have been funnier if I didn't say it, but I would have felt bad by not continuing the joke. I actually missed the great. Why did I even say that? I should have just. My first instinct was actually just to keep reading. I should trust my instincts. They're funny. They're funny. I'm a funny guy, I swear. It's like when you're at like a class or something, and you think of something really funny to say, but you don't say because you're kind of like, is that okay to say? and then the moment passes you by and it's like it's over already. Or maybe you whisper it to your friend and he says it and he gets all the glory of making people laugh. It is you know when you really get a great joke and you make a whole room of people laugh. It is a great feeling, I must say. And obviously, I mean, there's a reason for that. You're getting positive feedback, but like I remember I did that before with a class of people. Um, it was just I think it was like I think we were trying to choose a bunch of questions for someone to ask someone, but we got like personal questions to ask, while other stuff was like related to his field, just to kind of give a little bit of difference because it was like a big long talk. Making the people laugh becomes a core memory. I think that's right. I wonder is that how comedians got started, and then they just started developing their craft from there. Uh, but I think it was something like yeah, we had like personal questions and we were all sitting there trying to work out what to say. People were like, oh, what does he do after a thing, and we were all sitting there, and when the girl starts talking about someone mentions how old he is. They're not sure how old he is, and someone says it, and one of the girls is amazed. She's like, "Oh my god, he looks so much younger than I thought." And I was like, "We should ask him his skincare routine," and that got a big laugh from the room, and I felt good for the rest of the day. Actually, I'm gonna be honest, it kind of extended a little bit past a couple of days. It was like I was happy with that one because like it wasn't just like a kind of couple of chuckles. It was like full on the whole room burst out laughing, and I was quite proud of that one. But I think you are right, Heidman. It is 90% timing. Uh, the you only need to watch people like Dave Chappelle, or it's a mix of timing and delivery. So I wouldn't even say 90% is timing, but I mean I guess you could say delivery is a part of timing, but I'd also say like delivery incorporates both timing and uh, how you say something. It's kind of hard to say. Is delivery how you say something alone, and it's conjoined with timing to make something funny, or is it one and the same, or is timing a part of delivery? I feel like timing is a part of delivery because if you time something correctly, but you don't put emphasis on it correctly, then then it's not funny. Delivery can be included with timing. Timing seems more to be a subset of delivery. Yeah, yeah. That's kind of that's kind of how I feel as well. And then like alongside it, you'd have like your manner of speaking or the way you say something. But it is amazing watching different like how comedians completely have different styles. Dave Chappelle has a completely different style to Bill Burr, who has a completely different style to Michael McIntyre, who has a different style to Lee Mack, who has a different style to what's his name, David. I can't remember his name. He's always on the shows with Lee Mack, those those game shows or panel shows, I should say, not game shows. Game shows are more American. Although there are game shows, panel shows though are so great. Um, like you can see complete like Lee Mack is very quick witted, as is David. But David then is his stuff is often more long rants about things in a very kind of posh British way, and it's great. While Lee Mack seems more down to earth. But I think the master of delivery for me is Norm Macdonald, because of how unorthodox he is, because of how strange he does stuff. Completely, it's all him. There's, you know, you could probably copy um, various different comedians. You would probably try and take from uh, what's it called? Take from Chappelle. And I've seen, you definitely can tell when some people are influenced by Norm, but he still just has a completely unique way of doing things. But he really did master timing and delivery. I can't even say the joke because it's bad. I'm thinking about the Andy Richter joke. Oh, that one was funny. Um, Another person who I think is, it's kind of a mix of timing but also improbability is Germa. I genuinely consider Germa to be a savant when it comes to comedy. He just seems hardwired to be capable of turning anything funny. Um, God, I love Germa. I don't watch his streams as much as I used to because I'm kind of busy streaming, but I do love his stuff. I love how this whole conversation started by me fucking up a joke. It would have been way funnier if I didn't. Heidman, you have to make the same comment like next stream, and then I can pretend to make the joke. Okay, it's like in a comedy show where they tell the same jokes at different stages. Germa does have great improv skills. I only watched during his TF2 years. That's when I started watching as well. But I kind of started watching streams, and I watched the highlights of streams and some of the extended highlights. There's been I've actually thrown up once watching Germa from laughing too much. It made me cry and like actually get sick. Maybe next stream I'll just repeat the punchline out of context. That's like what me and a friend did when we were very young. We loved that episode of SpongeBob, the 24. We would just be sitting in class together, and he'd just like lean over to me and just look at me. 24. And we'd burst out laughing. Oh, one time I hit him with a 25 and it fucking floored him like he couldn't. He got into one of those fits of laughter, and I've gotten into them so badly before that like once you get it under control, you kind of sit back up and you just see the person out of the corner of your mind and you fucking lose it again. Oh, that's such a great old SpongeBob was so great. Oh my god, it's 5 past 12. Okay, we will continue reading. How? Okay, there's only a. Okay, I might. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. How long is the biological theories section? Okay. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Fodor is but one attempt to solve the problem. Oh wait, hang on. Is that where I stopped? The causal connections between the mental state and dogs in certain circumstances is therefore asymmetrically dependent on the causal connection between the same mental states and cats. The former will only exist if the latter does, but the latter will exist whether or not the former did. The right way to formulate a causal theory, then, is to hold that it is the causal connections that are thus not thus asymmetrically dependent that give rise to meaning. In the case at hand, the mental state represents cats uniquely, because the causal connection between it and cats is not asymmetrically dependent on some other causal connection. Fodor is but one attempt to solve the problems facing the causal theory, and all such efforts have faced a battery of further objections. The result has been the incorporation of ever more subtle and complex technical qualifications into the causal theory in terms of which causal theorists want to account for meaning, so as to stave off further various counterexamples. But even if one or more of these various technical moves can successfully deal with the specific counterexamples they are designed to handle, it seems that several fundamental differences facing any possible causal theory would remain unanswered. That would be something I'd be interested in looking into. The first problem is that the theory seems to assume that it is not possible for a mental state genuinely to represent anything other than something that typically causes it. But we've already seen in Chapter 1 powerful reasons for thinking that this assumption is false. Your thoughts and perceptions might represent cats even if they are never caused by cats at all, but by a Cartesian evil spirit or a supercomputer stimulating your brain as it sits in a vat of nutrients. A causal theorist might deny that this is really possible, but if so, he cannot appeal to the causal theory itself as grounds for this denial without begging the question. A causal theorist willing to countenance the narrow content favored by the conceptual role theorist in addition to the wide content emphasized by the causal theory could perhaps reply that the possibility of these skeptical scenarios can be accounted for in terms of the former sort of content, the logical and conceptual connections one's thoughts about cats have to other mental states might suffice to make them genuinely about cats, despite the possibility that they are caused by something other than cats. It is not clear that this would work to save the causal theory, for in my thoughts it would for if my thoughts would be thoughts about cats regardless of what caused them, how can causal relations play any role in generating meaning? But in any event, the causal theory would still remain open to an objection that we've already seen applied to the conceptual role theory. Like that theory, the causal theory would seem at most to account for why a particular mental state means this specifically, rather than that. It does not thereby account for why it has any meaning at all. It seems that it is only when a mind, with all its intentionality, has already come into being that there can be any mental states which bear specific meanings related to their specific causes. And if so, then an appeal to such causes cannot by itself account for intentionality. The causal theorists' appeal to alleged cases of meaning in nature does nothing to undermine the point. It supports it. When we say smoke means fire, we're not speaking literally. Smoke doesn't mean anything, at least not by the way the word smoke means, or at least not in the way that the word smoke means, given our linguistic practices. Smoke. Smoke is just smoke, a meaningless arrangement of particles. Because smoke is typically caused by fire, we can interpret it as a sign of fire, but in that case the meaning is all in us, not in smoke. That, that is, it's caused by fire. Explains why smoke means fire to us. That is, why it means fire rather than, say, water. But that it means anything at all has nothing to do with its causal connections to the fire, and everything to do with our powers of interpretation and evaluation of evidence. Insofar as the intuitive plausibility of causal theories of meaning rests on appeal to such examples as smoke means fire, it thereby seems to rest on little more than a pun. The sense of means in this case just isn't the same sense as that in which your thoughts about fire means fire. The latter is a case of what Searle calls intrinsic intentionality, while the former is, when not a case of mere as-if intentionality, at best a case of derived intentionality. There is a third, perhaps even deeper objection to any possible causal theory. The point derives from an argument presented by Karl Popper, in the context of a critique of causal accounts of language, but it seems to be applicable to causal theories of intentionality as well. So this is getting into the philosophy of language. Interesting. Well, I'm not surprised, obviously, those two are heavily connected. Any account such theories could give of the relevant causal relations holding between a particular mental state and a particular object in the external world will require picking out a particular beginning point of the causal series. Let's call it A, as the thing represented, and a particular endpoint, B, as the mental state doing the representing. So suppose A is a particular cat you are looking at, and B is a particular brain state that the causal theorist wants to identify with the perpetual or the perceptual mental states representing the cat. The problem is this. In the external physical world, as it is in itself, apart from human purposes and interests, there seems to be nothing more than ongoing causal flux, very Heraclitean, comprising an unimaginably complex sequence of causes, or a sequence of events. Nothing in this flux is objectively either the determinant starting point, or a particular sequence of events, or the determinant end point. It is we who pick out certain events and count them as beginnings and endings. Their status as beginnings and endings is relative to certain purposes and interests of ours. That is as true of A and B as of anything else. There is no objective reason why A should be the cat rather than the cat's fur, or a particular photon in the stream leading from the cat to our retinas, and no objective reason why B should be this particular brain state rather than the one immediately before or after it in the causal sequence of brain processes. So the fact that the causal chain, purportedly explaining your perceptual experience of the cat, begins with A and ends with B, would appear to be a mind-dependent fact, determined by human purposes and interests. That is to say, it appears to presuppose intentionality. But then, the characterization of all causal chains would presuppose intentionality, in which case, no appeal to such causal chains could truly explain it after all. What time is it? Okay, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I might try 1, 2, 3, 4. I might try and get through these. Number 3, biological theories. Materialist philosophers of mind, sensitive to the difficulties inherent in deriving meaning from brute causation, have suggested a more plausible candidate for a purely physical property capable of grounding intentionality might be found in the notion of biological function. Fins perform the function of allowing the organism having them to move through the water. Wings perform the function of allowing winged creatures to fly. Hearts perform the function of pumping blood. These organs serve these functions because natural selection formed them to do so. Might this sort of function underlie the meaningfulness of mental states? It is, after all, surely the function of a desire to drink water to get a creature that has that desire to actually drink water, which a creature needs to do so in order to survive and reproduce. That is plausibly why natural selection puts such desires into creatures, and perhaps that's all it is, for the desire to have that particular meaning or intentional content it has. Its representing water is nothing more than its serving the function of getting the creature to drink water. Meaning on this view is identical to biological function. Hence it is sometimes called a biosemantic theory of meaning, a label associated with Ruth Millikan, one of its main proponents, so a biosemantic theory. An advantage of this theory is that it seems to provide a way of dealing with the misrepresentation problem. If the meaning or intentional content of a mental state derives from the biological function it serves, it will have that same meaning if on some occasions it is caused by something other than what it is normally caused by. There thus needs be no mystery about how a mental state could be about something other than what happens to cause it on some particular occasions, and thereby misrepresent what happens then to cause it. For example, if the desire to avoid snakes has the meaning it does because it serves the function of causing the creature having it to flee when snakes are present, it will still have this meaning even when a particular instance of it is caused, not by the presence of a snake, but by the presence of a rope or a hose that, due to odd lighting, looks like a snake. Nevertheless, there are several serious objections to the biological theory. An obvious initial objection is that, at best, it seems dubious that it could account for such sophisticated mental states as, say, one's belief that Wittgenstein is a more important philosopher than Russell. I was kind of thinking that, I wouldn't have put it that way, but I was kind of thinking there seems to be very complex beliefs and desires and intentional states that are difficult to explain through a purely biological way. But of course, we've seen evolution, for example, create very complex things. Surely natural selection never hardwired such a belief into anyone. I think in this case, his one is particularly good because it's an opinion-based thing. One is better than the other. For beliefs about the relative importance of Wittgenstein and Russell could not only have not occurred to anyone, or Wittgenstein and Russell could not only have not occurred to anyone in the period of history in which natural selection formed human nature, but wouldn't have served any evident biological function even if they had occurred to anyone then. Biosemantics advocates hold that such highly complex mental states might, nevertheless, derive a secondary functionality by virtue of their relationship to mental states, like the desire for water, that are more clearly functional. But however such a suggestion might be developed, there may be a deeper problems. One of them is that the theory appears to entail that nothing that didn't evolve could possibly have intentionality, for, not having evolved, it wouldn't have states that serve any particular function. But this seems false. We can at least imagine cases where creatures come into existence other than by evolution, yet have intentionality. If a freak occurrence in a swamp were spontaneously to generate out of the muck a molecule for molecule living duplicate of you, obviously this is it's almost kind of imagining like a Star Trek. They're able to take your data and recreate it. Or in this case, a swamp. A swamp man, as philosophers who have discussed this sort of examples have affectionately dubbed it, all cute, then this duplicate would surely have thoughts, experiences, and other intentional mental states, despite not having come about through evolution. Another difficulty is that the biological theory seems unable to deal with the disjunction problem. If, for example, a desire to avoid cheetahs happened to be hardwired into our ancestors as a result of their interactions with both cheetahs and tigers in certain circumstances, for example, at night time when tigers might be hard to distinguish from cheetahs, then it would seem to follow that the biological function of this desire is to get us to avoid both cheetahs and tigers in certain circumstances, and thus it would follow too that the desire represents not cheetahs uniquely, but rather cheetahs or tigers in certain circumstances. Hang on, let me take another drink. In reply to this, Daniel Dennett has suggested that if such examples indicate that meaning must be indeterminate on a biological theory of intentionality, this does not serve as an objection to the theory, for such indeterminacy is common throughout the biological realm. A certain organ may have evolved originally to serve one function, and then at a later stage in evolution taken on another. One creature might have evolved feathers because they serve the function of attracting mates, while its descendants, having migrated to a colder environment, found the feathers serve to keep their bodies warm. A function the feathers might retain even if the mating function disappears. Which function the feathers really serve might, at some stage in this long evolutionary process, simply be indeterminate. But in this case, why couldn't the meaning of a desire to avoid cheetahs also be indeterminate? That is, not clearly about cheetahs uniquely, as opposed to cheetahs or tigers in certain circumstances. Why assume this is a problem for the biological theory, rather than just a further instance of the ambiguity evident in many biological phenomena? One possible objection to this reply is that it fails to explain how the biological theory can deal with cases of mental states whose meaning or intentional content is determinate and unambiguous. The case for holding that there are indeed such mental states being something we'll examine shortly. Another objection is that even if all our mental states were indeterminate or ambiguous in their meaning or content, this would not save the theory, for even if the theory could explain why they have ambiguous meanings, it would not explain why they have any meaning at all. While a heart serves the function of pumping blood, the heart nevertheless doesn't mean or represent pumping blood, for it doesn't mean or represent anything. It's just a muscle. Words, sentences, and pictures mean things, but muscles surely don't, any more than gallstones and hangnails do. But if having evolved to serve a certain function doesn't suffice to give the heart meaning or intentional content, why would this suffice to give a belief or desire meaning or intentional content? Wouldn't mental states exhibiting intentionality already have to exist in the first place, in order for natural selection to select some of them as having survival value? Excuse me. I apologize. If so, then, even if mental states serving a particular If so, then, even if a mental state's serving a particular biological function could account for its having the specific meaning that it has, ambiguously or otherwise, it couldn't account for its having any meaning at all. Natural selection's purported ability to shape meaning would presuppose that there is meaning there to be shaped, in which case biological function couldn't possibly provide a full explanation of meaning. This is, of course, an application to the biological theory of an objection already considered when discussing the conceptual role in causal theories, namely that the operation of the mechanism the theory appeals to in order to explain intentionality itself presupposes intentionality. This criticism seems to apply to the biological theory as much as to the causal theory is even more evident when one considers that ultimately there may be no substantive difference between them. For, as Searle has argued, the trouble with appeals to biological function in this context is that all talk about biological function must, from a Darwinian point of view anyway, be regarded as nothing more than a shorthand for talk about causation. To say that the heart was selected by evolution to serve the function of pumping blood is, strictly speaking, to say something false, for evolution doesn't literally select anything, nor does the heart literally serve any purpose or function at all, at least not in a Darwinian view. Indeed, the whole point of Darwin's account of evolution by natural selection is to get rid of the need to appeal to literal purpose and functions in nature, to explain the appearance of purpose and function in terms that make reference only to purposeless, meaningless causal processes. The right thing to say about the heart is, in a Darwinian view, just this: it causes the blood to flow, and it was in turn caused by a series of successive genetic mutations that allowed the creatures exhibiting them to survive and reproduce in greater numbers than those which lacked them. And that's it. If talk about the purpose or function for which the heart was selected has any application at all, it is only as a way of noting what in reality are the purposeless, functionless, and meaningless results of unthinking causal processes can seem to be purposeful, functional, and meaningful. Talk about purposes and functions, if taken literally, seem to presuppose intentionality. In particular, it seems to presuppose the agency of an intelligence who designed something for a particular purpose or to serve a particular function. But the aim of Darwinian evolutionary theory is to explain biological phenomena in a manner that involves no appeal to intelligent design. As we've already reasoned to note in earlier chapters, just as modern physics has intended to explain phenomena by carving off the subjective qualitative appearance of things and relocating them into the mind, so too did the Darwinian revolution in biology push purpose and function out of the biological realm, making them out to be mind-dependent and devoid of objective reality. This is of a piece with the general materialistic tendency to regard genuine scientific explanation as requiring the stripping away of anything that smacks of the subjective, first-person intentional point of view. It thus seems odd that the materialist philosopher should think it is a hopeful strategy to appeal to biological function in order to account for intentionality. As Searle argues, this move is simply not open to them, given what is entailed by a Darwinian account of the biological realm, an account materialists must necessarily be deeply committed to. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, what time is it? Alright, I might try and speed run these last few pages for not the chapter, but just kind of the last topic, because I feel like it would be silly to do 3 of them and leave 1 more left. And then there's just a small bit of the chapter left. Though Dennett, as indicated, sympathizes with biological theories of intentionality, he has also developed a distinctive approach of his own, and I forgot to say it, for instrumentalist theories. It begins by proposing that what we're trying to understand in explaining intentionality is the behavior of certain complex physical systems, human beings and perhaps other animals, in explaining the behavior of a physical system. Dennett says we can take one of the 3 different stances towards it. We can, first of all, take what he calls the physical stance towards it, accounting for its behavior in terms of the laws of physics and other natural sciences. This is the stance we typically take towards simple physical phenomena, whether in everyday life or in science. If we're trying to predict the course of a billiard ball or the consequences of mixing certain chemicals, it usually suffices to think of these phenomena as governed by basic physical laws. Sometimes, however, the physical stance is unhelpful. If we're trying to understand the workings of a bodily organ, the heart, say, or of a machine, an automobile perhaps, then we won't get very far by treating these things merely as physical systems governed by basic scientific laws. Confidently predicting and explaining the behavior of such systems is made possible by adopting instead the design stance towards them, which involves considering them as performing a certain function. To think of the heart as a collection of basic particles governed by the law of physics isn't going to help you diagnose arrhythmia. But thinking of it instead of as an organ whose function is to pump blood will. There are cases, however, where even the design stance is insufficient to allow us to explain and predict a system's behavior. The fact that a chess-playing computer was designed to serve the function of playing chess won't help us guess what its strategy against Kasparov will be. That we take a mouse to be designed by natural selection to avoid predators won't tell us what path it will take in order to escape an oncoming cat. Here, Dennett says, we need to take the intentional stance. which involves regarding something as an intentional system, an entity having beliefs, desires, and other mental states, and being capable of reasoning on the basis of them, and predicting and explaining its behaviors accordingly. We say that the mouse thinks there is a place to hide over there, or that the computer intends to employ the French defense, and are thereby enabled to understand what the mouse or computer does. Excuse me. My throat is getting a little parched. Or sore. I'm not too sure why. Which of these stances is the correct one taken in a particular situation? It depends. If you're trying to determine what move the computers will make, but how... If you're trying to determine not what moves a computer will make, but how many people will take to lift it and carry it over to the room where the match will be held, the physical stance rather than the intentional stance will be the most appropriate. If you're trying to figure out how to turn the computer on, the design stance will be the one to take. In each case, the right answer depends only in part on objective features of the system itself. It depends also, and ultimately, on our interests. Does a computer really have the intentionality we attribute to it in taking the intentional stance towards it? Dennett's answer is that if it is complex enough in its behavior that we cannot usefully explain and predict that behavior without taking the intentional stance, then it has all the intentionality a thing could possibly have. But its having it is, again, ultimately a function of our finding it useful to treat it as having it. And all intentionality is, in Dennett's view, like this, including our own. And all intentionality is, in Dennett's view, like this, including our own. We regard ourselves as intentional systems because this is the most practical way of dealing with ourselves and each other, of explaining and predicting our behavior. There is nothing more to it than that. Given that Dennett seems to not be a realist about intentionality, that is, someone who takes it to exist independently of our purposes and interests, nor even, as causal and biological theorists appear to be, reductionists, who want to reduce intentionality to something more basic, causal relations or biological functions, he is often classified as an instrumentalist, as holding that talk about the intentionality of our mind is a useful instrument or tool for understanding our behavior, but doesn't describe anything that exists objectively, independently of our purposes and interests. Thus understood, his view seems open to an obvious and seemingly fatal objection. For us to take a stance towards something, including the intentional stance, is itself a manifestation of intentionality, so we can't coherently suppose that intentionality is a mere artifact of the stance we take towards ourselves. Dennett's reply to such an objection would seem to lie in his influential strategy of the homuncular decomposition. Oh no, that sounds difficult. Welcome back, Kwai. I'm back, finally in the office. Nice one. Say hi to your office friends for me. And welcome in, Kankuro. We're just reaching the end of our reading today. I actually think I'll go have some maybe. They're all late. Look at you, Kwai, being a good. Well, actually, you're like the manager in there, aren't you? You have to tell them. You know what? Tell them that I'm disappointed in them for being late. No, don't. That would be mean. Although you might actually have to do that because they are late. Maybe they got caught in traffic or something. Sadly, I am. I know. No one likes having to be early or even on time or even going into work in the first place. I think I'll have another cup of tea after my thing. My throat's a little sore. I hope I'm not coming down with something, actually. That would suck. The idea is this. So, homuncular decomposition. The idea is this. We can usefully regard our minds as comprised of a number of subsystems that perform various mental functions, visual processing, linguistic competence, and so on. Each subsystem can itself be metaphorically understood as a homunculus, a little man, who performs some particular task. But the functions performed by each of these homunculi can, like our minds, be thought of as comprised of yet more basic functions performed by smaller subsystems. In other words, each of the homunculi comprising our own minds can be thought of as comprising smaller homunculi of its own. Excuse me a moment. You know what's worse than mandatory work? mandatory fun at work. Oh, like when they throw a pizza party and you have to go. It's a mandatory pizza party. Ugh, I know the type of thing that you're on about. Thankfully, I think if you manage to get a good office, like a good workplace, with like a fun group of people, it can actually be. It's not mandatory fun, but I definitely have seen that before. It's not fun at all. So each of the homunculi comprising of our own minds can be thought of as comprising smaller homunculi of its own. At the level of our mind as a whole, we are dealing with what we have reason to treat as systems, possessing a very high degree of intentionality. But the homunculi that comprise our minds, precisely because they perform more specific, less comprehensive functions, possess a lower degree of intentionality. By the same token, the smaller homunculi that comprise them possesses even less intentionality. If we keep decomposing each level of homunculi into ever smaller levels, eventually we will come to a basic level of homunculi who, because they perform functions as simple as possible, such as have as little intentionality as possible. Think of these as extremely stupid homunculi. Homunculi whose task is no more complicated than flipping a switch back and forth. Just a reminder that homunculi means like little man. I think it comes. I can't remember who it comes from. I think it might be Hume. Well, it might have other people beforehand. I think either Hume or maybe Locke kind of talked about like how our mind represents things as a homunculus. That our thoughts. No, it wouldn't have been Locke or Hume. I can't remember. I'll have to look that up again. Because the idea was that like our minds are like homunculi, that like it goes through the processes in the brain and then it's projected onto our like minds for our homunculi to look at. I like the word homunculi. Good mouthfeel. It does, doesn't it? Homunculi. At least that's how I'm pronouncing it. I'll pronounce it how it feels. But yeah, it is quite a nice word to say. Such a task could, of course, be performed by a very simple machine, yet it is not at all implausible to suppose that whatever intentionality was possessed by such a machine would be intentionality that existed only relative to the stance we might take towards it. But then it shouldn't be implausible to suppose that the intentionality possessed by the very stupid homunculi that comprise the most elementary level of subsystems comprising our minds should be explicable in terms of the intentional stance, in which case the intentionality possessed by our minds as a whole, which is just a composite of the intentionality possessed by its various subsystems, is also inexplicable. Of course, then I think we might be running into, I'm just going to try and guess, we might have the problem here of the unity of our conscious experience, I wonder. This strategy is not without ingenuity. Yeah, it is. It's actually very, very, it's a really great mind, like kind of thought experiment, the way he explains it, Dennett. But that it fails genuinely to answer the objection at hand seems to follow if we accept Seale's distinction between intrinsic intentionality on the one hand and derived and as-if intentionality on the other. Machines, of course, have whatever intentionality they have, only in either a derived or an as-if way. But our intentionality is intrinsic. So if there really are basic homunculi comprising our minds, their intentionality too must be intrinsic, in which case they are not comparable to machines, which do not have intrinsic intentionality. The intuitive force of Dennett's argument seems to rest on his comparison of the stupidity of the basic homunculi and the stupidity of a machine. But the two are not stupid in the same sense. The homunculi are stupid because they have extremely low intelligence. The machine is stupid because it has no intelligence at all. Strictly speaking, the machine isn't really stupid in the first place. I actually mentioned this earlier when I kind of said maybe dumb isn't the right word because it doesn't even think. Because one has to have at least a minimal level of intelligence even to count as stupid. By comparison, that is, with those with higher intelligence. I gotta go get coffee again. Be right back. No worries, Quai. The machine doesn't even rise to the level of stupidity, while the homunculi have at least that much going for them. If intentionality is intrinsic, then it isn't merely an artifact of our taking the intentional stance towards ourselves. Dennett might deny that it really is intrinsic. He might hold that the homunculi, no less than the machine, have at most derived or as if intentionality. But if he says that the intentionality of the homunculi, and thus our minds as a whole, is derived, he's back at the incoherent position of saying that we have intentionality only because we take ourselves to have it, where taking ourselves to have it is itself a manifestation of intentionality. And if instead he says that our intentionality is only as if, then he's saying something even more radical, that our intentionality doesn't really exist at all. Well, this brings us to another theory, and that itself is eliminativism. But I think I'm going to end the reading there. I actually, I time things so well. It's just past the 2 hour mark for me. But my throat is getting a little scratchy. I'm kind of surprised. I don't know if maybe walking earlier today may have messed with it. Also, I need to get up and stretch my shoulders. I think sitting in this position holding my book wasn't great for them. Don't push yourself. No worries. I'll make sure I'll have a nice cup of tea there. I think I need to change up how I sit during reading streams. Although this is the first time it happened, so it might just be, I don't know, maybe I was sitting kind of weirdly. I'll try maybe having my book on the desk, because I usually sit back. I kind of sit tall and have my shoulders back, but they're at me a little today. That's okay. That's okay. But I might just look around. I think I did turn off my ads. Great, yeah, because we didn't get interrupted. Ooh. Wait, what am I doing? Oh yeah, I was just checking who is online at the moment. Who's someone we could possibly raid into? Ooh, could do. So I'm thinking again. I wasn't really doing ASMR style reading where I was reading kind of loudly. I was reading loudly. Ooh, let me just check something real quick. Okay, no, I think that audio is only in one other place. Okay, that's good. Okay, I think I know who we might raid. I might just hang on a moment or two. Finish off my bit of water. But I like that. I like there's some very interesting theories. I might have to look into because I think he said that the oh god, what was the term he used again for it? The causal rule is kind of the main one taken. Although Dennant's one is very interesting as well. I've definitely heard of Daniel Dennant, although I haven't looked at his philosophy too much. It definitely seems interesting. But I believe we're getting into the two Churchlands. I think it's a husband and wife philosophers, which is couple goals, but they're like eliminativists who don't even believe that the mind itself exists. I think it's very like extreme materialism. And in this case, it would be thinking that intentionality doesn't exist, that our thoughts don't exist. So we'll be getting into that, and it'll be very interesting to read, to go through that. I might do it again. I might do another stream tomorrow if my voice is okay, because I definitely want to make sure that it's okay for the Saturday or Sunday singing stream. Potentially, I could do 2 days. I could do both days, but like I don't know what I would sing for both of those days. I might actually ask those of you who, hang on, I thought I set it up, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I forgot to do that. I thought I would set up a timer to send certain messages, but a full weekend concert, I know, but I don't know about that one. I'll see how excited I am from doing the first one. But I might make a post or something on Twitter or maybe somewhere. People can post suggestions of songs they'd like me to sing, primarily around Christmas. And ideally, it's ones that I know. But I can also just take suggestions during the stream as well. But then I'll also probably pull in a couple. I have a couple of like Irish trad Christmassy songs that will be good, and some various other like genres that I think would be very fun. Oh, D Kankaro. Oh, I think Kankaro, you might have seen this, but this is gonna be an emote for when you guys want to like send a hydrate redeem. Uh, you guys can hit me in the face with a bottle of water. Whoa, whoa, bottle of water. I like the you guys can't see my mouse unfortunately, but like the way the hair is like flying back, it really shows like I'm like my head is being whipped back by this water that was thrown at me by a very caring fan, launched at my face like a catapult. See, that's what you guys, the aggressive hydration. I know this is what you guys do when you want to care for me. Like, and I try and do like this. I try and do like cute things. Like I warm you up like you're cold on a winter's day, and I try and warm you up. But you guys have a different way of showing your appreciation. It seems. It's like cute aggression. I experience that sometimes, and it's a very weird feeling. It's literally it's like you see something so cute that you're just like I have to hit something. Like you like I've experienced it a couple times with VTubers. Some VTubers like Nadeshko, for example, who's had an unfortunate accident actually. Or not accident. Her dog was Nadeshko VT, but her dog was attacked by another dog that was off the leash, and during the breakup, the guy whose dog it was, I think he did something to. I think he may have broken the her dog's shoes jaw, or at least something happened during the pandemonium of separating them, and now he's in the vet and he's not in the best of health, but I think I hope I'm sure he'll be okay after a bit, but uh, she just posted a thing about it, and it's kind of been keeping us updated. I feel horrible for her. It's a horrible thing to have happen. Um, but she did post a photo of the doggo, and he seemed to be in decent health. So he was being looked after. So that's good at least. And I think they're going to be going after the guy whose dog was not on a leash, which would be good. Mm-hmm. It's very unfortunate to see. I know that one of the best things you can do, other than carry a gun, I suppose, like if your dog is attacked by another dog and it's latched on and it isn't letting go. So, for example, it's a bully. For example, it's a bulldog or an XL bully or whatever. If it has a collar, to grab the collar and twist. It basically acts like a tourniquet. Another good one you can do. It's the same idea, but it just gives you more leverage. Is if there's a stick like a stick or something that you have in your hand, you can stick it under, or any strong, sturdy like stick shaped object. Put it under the collar and twist it. Some people say things like, "Oh, pick it up by the legs," or uh, something dumb like that. Like, no, certain types of dogs, especially if a dog's just attacking another dog. And I apologize for the kind of dark turn, this kind of sad turn this took, but you know, you're going to have to uh, like cause unconsciousness in such a dog, or at least cause so much damage that it will get away from you. And it's unfortunate that you have to think about it, but there's been a lot of attacks recently, in like the UK and Ireland regarding XL bullies, which are just they're just dogs on steroids. They're crazy. I'm actually like I admire them. Or admiring them, admiring like just the size of their muscles. It's crazy. But but yeah, it's unfortunate. But on a good note, I think it's doing well. It'll be how tall are you, Rua? I'm we'll say around 6 foot, but I do have the ability to when the world of this magic, or when the world of magic seeps into the physical world in a strong way, I can tap into my Tuatha Day ability, as well as some of the mythical humans that lived once, uh, many years ago, and stand at about we'll say about 8 to 9 feet onto my height. Basically, I can become a giant. It's pretty cool. I can become as like tall as these trees, but not right now. I'm just like normal height. How tall are you, Kang? Are you like a full life-sized puppet, or are you like a normal-sized puppet? Because for those of you who don't know, Kankuro is a puppet VTuber. He's pretty cool. Very cool. Actually, wait, hang on. Let me do some stuff. I'm 5'10". Ah, I see, I see. Note that what I say Rua is. Never mind, never mind. Uh, I will do Kankuro. So let me do. Hang on, because I was watching these. Wait, no, that won't do that. I have to go SO first, and then did I mess? I no, I didn't. And then we'll go Kankuro King Chan. No, that's not a command. That's not a command. It just summons Kankuro. And then we'll also do that. So we'll shout out both of my Stuema friends. You guys should. You guys might be the only two people here at the moment, so you guys should follow each other. Kankuro is a very. I've known Kankuro for a while. Kind of at the very start when I started streaming. Uh, Very very cool guy. Uh, I think though I want to go have a cup of tea because my voice is starting to get at me. I should come up with a Kankuro King thing. When you type that in chat, it just goes like lonely puppet man VTuber. Will we go Keitaro? Wait, let me just refresh my thing and see who's there. Yeah, I think we raid into Keitaro. Keitaro's a cool guy. Mix it up / Sammy can make it happen. You can have custom raid animations. Ooh, okay, I'm gonna copy that. Copy those two, and I'm gonna pin it. Okay, so we're gonna raid into Keitaro. He's a oh, what is he again? He's a hamster, isn't he? Yeah, he's a cute little hamster. So we'll raid into him, and I think we'll just do something like for those of you that are subscribed, you can use my one emote. Although I'm thinking of uploading that funny water emote. What was I? We'll just go Rua raid. I'll come up with something proper later. Probably be related to something like cows. No, that's not what I want to have. That's a different person's emote. We'll just do like this if you have access to it. D, for instance, does. Thank you for joining, Hyde. It was very nice to have you here, and it was very nice to have all of you here. I think Kwai is still getting tea, so it was nice to have her here as well. But thank you all for joining, as always. Let me just get the raid started. So we'll go Keitoro. Okay, so thank you all for joining me. I think we got a nice bit of the book read. Gareth Mila Mahagat and the Slán go foil.